Warning: this video contains content that may be unsettling for some viewers. It explores dark themes and intense situations that are not suitable for the lighthearted. Viewer discretion is advised. The Peking Man. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. My parents were out of town, and I was left in charge of the house. I was 16, old enough to be left alone, or at least I thought so. I'd stayed alone before, but this time felt different. On the first night, everything was normal. I had pizza, watched some TV, and texted my friends until late. As the hours went by, the house got quieter and quieter, and I started to notice every little creak and whisper. I blamed it on the old wood floors and the fact that I wasn't used to being in complete silence. I laughed it off, thinking I was just scaring myself. But the next night, things started to happen. It was around 2:30 in the morning, and I'd just turned off the TV, feeling exhausted. Just as I was about to head up to bed, I heard a faint tapping sound. It was so quiet, almost like the wind brushing against the window, so I ignored it. But then it came again, a steady, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. It sounded deliberate, like someone knocking gently, testing to see if I would notice. I tried to shrug it off as the wind, but the noise wouldn't stop. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the living room window facing the backyard. I took a deep breath and crept over to the window, telling myself it was probably just a branch brushing against the glass. But when I pulled the curtain aside, my stomach dropped. There, standing just outside the window, was a man. He was so close his face was nearly pressed against the glass. He stared straight ahead, his eyes wide and unblinking, his lips stretched into a twisted smile that didn't reach his eyes. His face was gaunt, pale like he hadn't seen the sun in weeks. He wore a dark, oversized coat that looked damp and grimy, and his hair was thin, sticking to his forehead in greasy strands. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat as I stared back at him. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, his face a few inches from the glass, that eerie smile never faltering. And then he raised his hand and tapped on the glass again. Tap, tap, tap. I stumbled back, my hands shaking as I reached for my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I whispered my address to the operator, barely able to get the words out. They told me to stay calm, and that officers were on their way. As I clutched the phone, I risked another glance at the window. He was still there, but his head was tilted now, almost as if he were studying me, like I was some kind of animal trapped in a cage. His mouth moved as if he were saying something, but I couldn't hear him through the glass. He lifted his hand again, pressing his palm flat against the window. And for a second, I thought I could feel his cold touch through the glass. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the sound of sirens approaching. The man didn't move, didn't even flinch as the lights from the patrol car washed over the house. Only when the police knocked on the door did he finally back away, disappearing into the darkness of the yard. The officers took my too afraid to move, hoping he'd just leave. Finally, the tapping stopped, and the house fell silent. I waited, not daring to look, and after a few minutes I started to relax, thinking maybe he'd gone. But then I heard the floor creak. The sound was coming from inside the house. My heart nearly stopped as I listened, hearing slow, deliberate footsteps moving down the hallway toward my room. I clutched my phone, praying that it was just my imagination. But the footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside my door. My hand hovered over the call button, but I couldn't move. The doorknob twisted slowly, rattling as if someone was testing it.
"Come on out,"
a voice whispered, muffled but chillingly close. It was him. I froze, holding my breath, listening as he leaned against the door, pressing his weight into it as if he could sense me on the other side. I could feel his presence through the thin wood, smell the faint odor of damp earth and something rotten. He lingered for what felt like an eternity, whispering softly to himself. Then, slowly, the pressure lifted, and I heard the faint creak of floorboards as he moved away, back down the hall and toward the stairs. I stayed there, sitting in terrified silence until the first light of dawn crept into the room. By the time I found the courage to open my bedroom door, he was gone, but he'd left something behind. On the floor outside my room was a small, worn photograph of a house. My house, taken from the outside looking in. I told my parents everything, and they took me seriously this time. The police came again, but they found no trace of him. They said he was probably gone for good, but I wasn't so sure. To this day, every time I'm alone, I can still hear that faint, maddening sound echoing in my mind. Tap, tap, tap. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, subscribe, like the video, and comment your opinion on it. I will see you all very soon. And remember, keep an eye over your shoulder.